The mentality I had growing up was just to continue to work hard and just to, I always kind of set myself a list of things I want to achieve and aim to achieve them. And my biggest thing, I think, is never having an expectation on anything and just doing the best that I can, because I feel like in my past I've definitely put an expectation on something and that hasn't been met, so then I'm left disappointed. And now I've come to realize that with all these television shows I've been on, these competition shows, the power isn't in myself to be able to make myself win. The power is to just do the best that I can and let the people see how hard I work, so that they can encourage me to keep pushing and to vote me to win, if that makes sense.
Hey, Dr. Bill here. We are going to have an amazing Meet the Mentor with my friend Michael. Michael Dameski is a world-renowned Australian dancer known for his dedication and passion for the performing arts. His career began at the age of 13 as Billy. I was Billy at 13 also.
In the musical on Broadway, Billy Elliot. From getting a taste of being in the limelight at such a young age, Michael has continued to grace many stages, including Australia's So You Think You Can Dance, which he won, and they like to call them as Australia's favorite dancer, but we know it really means you're Australia's best dancer. And then he embarked on a journey to Los Angeles. Since moving to LA, he's been able to live some of his lifelong dreams. The list includes a tour with Disney's Newsies, which I went and saw you in, and he was phenomenal. Dancing for artists such as Bebe, Rexha, Sabrina, Carpenter, starring in Travis Wall's Shaping Sound, After the Curtain, and assisting the world-renowned Mia Michaels, our friend and mutual, most recently becoming the runner-up on NBC's World of Dance. Michael, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
So, first of all, how did that happen that you ended up on Broadway?
Oh, I mean, to be honest, growing up as a kid, I was just very outspoken, and I come from a very social family, so dancing around the house was supported and all of that kind of thing. And I just found a passion for performing at such a young age. And I got into dance lessons when I was around 10 years old. And I actually auditioned probably a year into taking dance class for Billy Elliot. And I actually got told that I wasn't good enough yet. But they saw potential, so they actually wanted me to go away and train. And because I was so passionate about it, I actually went ahead and worked on the things that they told me to work on, which was my ballet technique and my tapping and all of that kind of thing. And then a year later, they saw so much progression and they actually wanted more Billies for the show. So I went and auditioned a second time, and they saw how much growth I had. And even though I still wasn't kind of up there yet with all the other Billies that were performing the show, they just saw how much growth I had. So they gave me the opportunity to perform. And this was in Australia. I actually was cast in Billy Elliot in Sydney, which is where I'm originally from.
Oh, wow.
First.
So they cast that show there. So they were, I guess they were doing a global search.
Yeah, so actually what happened is Billy originated in London. That's where it first came out. And then it actually came to Australia after. And then when the Australian production started to kick off, it actually started auditioning for Broadway. And so in my world, I was just being a Billy in Australia. And so I did the show in Sydney and Melbourne, and then 6 months after the show had ended, because it was just a short season of the show in Melbourne, I got a call 6 months later, and they were like, "We need Billies on Broadway." So they offered me the opportunity.
How many Billies were there?
It rotated. I think there was around 4 of us, and we do rotations.
And is that mainly because of your age? They can't work you more hours or something?
Yes, it's that. It all comes down to our age. It has to be divided evenly enough. And on top of doing the show, we still have scheduled classes that we have to take that are compulsory. We still have to be tutored. We still have to go to school, basically. So they need to be able to fit that all in on top of us performing in a show.
When you did it in Australia, your accent wasn't an issue. When you did on Broadway, did you have to do it with an American accent, or they didn't care?
Well, actually, the Billy Elliot in Billy Elliot, the accent is a Geordie accent, which is something that's completely foreign to me and to any American.
I didn't think of that.
Yeah. So it was It was definitely modified, I think, in the US version, because I think when in Australia we did a true Geordie accent, and so people would understand. But in America, I think we had to modify it a little bit because sometimes that accent gets a little bit lost in translation.
Right.
But overall, because it's got that British twang to it, and I'm Australian, it wasn't too hard of an adjustment for me to learn.
When you came here and you did Billy Elliot at 13, how long did that run?
I was in the show for about 2 years. And it was on and off here and there because I did it in Australia, and then I had a break for about 6 months, and then I went to Broadway, and I did Broadway for about a year. And then because I did well on Broadway, they actually offered me to do the second national tour. So then I finished my run playing Billy Elliot on the second national tour.
So you don't send a 13-year-old kid to America. Like, one of your parents had you have stayed with you, or
yes. So my mom came with me, and it was, I mean, to see my mom there with me and to support my dream and what I want to do. And, you know, as much as you see me on Broadway and it's all positive, like my mom had to pretty much quit her job to come there with me and live there with me. And she wasn't on a visa that was able for her to work in the US. So she basically was just there with me, and I was the one working. So it was, I mean, props to her for doing that for me.
Yeah,
and I'm so grateful.
That's amazing. What a commitment.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen you dance. You're amazing.
Thank you.
A lot of what you do is gymnastics too. So, you know, I know you had to take ballet, you had to take tap. Did you have any formal gymnastics training?
To be honest, as a kid growing up, I just was very fearless. Like I wasn't afraid to like go backwards, or, you know, I always knew how to catch myself, and I just had a passion for like the tumbling side of dance, I would say. And I would watch gymnastics, the Olympics gymnastics in slow motion, and I would like try to mimic. And a lot of my basic tumbling moves, I self-taught myself to be able to do them.
I remember the first time I saw you dance, you did that little thing for, So You Think You Could Dance. You do that thing where you, from splits, you just like, stand up. What do you call that?
I don't know what that move is called. People actually have put that as one of my signature moves because I tend to do it all the time.
So he goes from splits without any hands and just like stands up.
Sometimes I use socks because the socks are slippery on my heels, so that's a bit of a cheat.
Oh, you cheated. Okay, well, I'm going to tell you, you can put all the socks you want on me. Not only would I never get in the splits, but if I did, I would stay there. Okay, so from Broadway, what happened?
So after Broadway finished, I went back to regular school. I flew back to Australia, to Sydney, with my family again. And I have 2 older sisters as well, and my dad, of course, and my grandparents. So I was away from them for a really long time. And then I went back to school, finished high school. And then the moment high school finished, I was 18. And as soon as it finished, like, the universe lined up. So You Think You Can Dance auditions came up. So I was like, oh my God, I'm the right age. I've always wanted to be on this show. I've watched the American version my whole life. So here's my opportunity. And then, I got into So You Think You Can Dance. It went from...
Now, was Paula on the show with you then?
Yes, this is when I met Paula.
Okay,
yes.
So we met through Paula Abdul.
Yes.
So she was a judge for that show, correct?
Yes, she was the lead judge, you would say, on my season of So You Think You Can Dance. And actually the season that I was on was a brought back season because it appeared on TV in Australia for 3 seasons, and then it disappeared for about a couple of years. And then the moment I turned 18, they brought it back for one more year, and that's when I got to meet Paula.
And then as soon as that finished is when you came here and did Newsies, correct?
Yes, so what happened was Paula really connected with me and my dancing ability, and you know, she's very giving in that sense of wanting to help people and especially dancers because that's her true background. Right. So I remember after the show had finished, I went ahead and had a meeting with Paula. And we just chatted and we just spoke about like where I see myself and everything like that. And she kind of was the one who encouraged me to take the leap of faith to move to the United States and see what opportunities come up. And she actually really wanted for me to perform on the US version of So You Think You Can Dance. And she actually made that happen. So as soon as that meeting was over, we were getting into the paperwork in order to get me over to the US to perform on So You Think You Can Dance. She organized it. She introduced me on the season finale, I think, of season 12. Yep. I got to perform. One of my biggest dreams, I guess, to perform on So You Think You Dance America, especially watching it as a kid. And then, after that, it was just, I was on this hustle and this grind to kind of get the ball rolling as to working in the United States. And what was the hardest part about that was, even though So You Think You Can Dance was such a popular show in the US, the season I was on in Australia didn't necessarily reach a lot of international countries. So
Right.
basically moving to the US wasn't like, oh, it's the guy from So You Think You Can Dance. It was actually like, who is this guy? We need to find out who this guy was. So
Yeah, and there isn't a lot of Australian television that comes here. I feel like
No.
a lot of ours goes there,
Yeah.
but not so much comes back.
Yeah.
So, like I started in the beginning, if you are a young, person watching this and dance is your passion, what kind of tips would you give them for what they should be doing now and how to kind of break into the world?
I guess my advice would be, honestly, the mentality I had growing up was just to continue to work hard and just to, I always kind of set myself a list of things I want to achieve and aim to achieve them. And my biggest thing, I think, is never having an expectation on anything and just doing the best that I can. Because I feel like in my past, I've definitely put an expectation on something and that hasn't been met. So then I'm left disappointed. And now I've come to realize that with all these television shows I've been on, these competition shows, the power isn't in myself to be able to make myself win. The power is to just do the best that I can and let the people see how hard I work, so that they can encourage me to keep pushing and to vote me to win, if that makes sense.
But I think another thing that is important to talk about, and you mentioned it earlier, is like, when you originally went in, they said, okay, well, you have to work on tap and you have to work. I think that if you're a dancer, you can't pigeonhole yourself
100%.
too much,
Yeah.
because if somebody hires a dancer, they may need you to tap, or they may need you to do rhythmic or ballet or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that diversification is really critical.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm grateful for as well. Growing up as a kid, I went to a dance studio that was trained, like you had to be a versatile dancer in order to be in the top classes and all of that kind of thing. And that really helped me, especially with So You Think You Can Dance. That show isn't just about doing what you're best at. It's doing all the styles of dance and showing people how many styles you can do. And that's another thing, just as a dancer, it's better to be able to do the other styles because you're not limiting yourself for the job opportunities that will come around. Because if you pigeonhole yourself as a dancer in one field, honestly, you're not going to get a job. You're not going to have a consistent kind of workflow. You're going to have one job for 1 month, and then you're going to be off for 2 months, and then you're going to be back.
Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, I understand the acting world. I have an agent. Do you have an agent that books you, or are there like auditions all around LA and you can just self-submit? Or how does that actually work?
Yeah, similar to the way the acting world, I would guess, works, is that we all have dance agencies. There's about probably 5 or 6 in LA that are like the ones that a lot of dancers are signed with. And every now and then, there'll be a call to, for someone's tour or...
So if you're a serious dancer, probably the first thing you should do is I'm sure you have to audition for these dance agencies, right?
Yes, usually that, but now we have the world of social media and you can use that as pretty much your resume to show rather than having to go physically to an audition. You can set up a meeting. A lot of dance agencies are very open to letting anyone come in to have a meeting to see if there's a right fit. You don't necessarily have to be, you don't necessarily have to dance in front of them in order to get a meeting. You can just call, you send in your stuff, then they'll probably get back to you and organize a meeting, and then you can see what happens from there on.
So if you were just starting off, like let's say, you're 18, you just finished college, and now you want a career as a professional dancer in LA, what do you do?
That's really a hard question, just because, I know a lot of people that do that, and what the biggest risk you have to take, I guess, if you're not in like a big city like say LA, is whether to decide if you want to stay in the city that you're in and continue to pursue a career in performing arts there and be comfortable, or you want to be a risk taker and you want to get on a flight and start transitioning into a way bigger city to be a small fish in a big pond. It just depends. Like, people love a comfortable kind of setting, or people love to take the risk. I'm more of a risk taker, and I'll go for whatever the harder, whatever's more challenging. But yeah, most people, you graduate, you either get on a flight or you stay where you are, but that's the next big thing, is to get signed with an agency, because that's how you're going to get those audition calls and those opportunities to meet and connect with all the people in the industry.
The agency that you are at is called what?
The agency I'm with is called Go To Talent.
Go To Talent?
Yes.
So tell me what your goals are right now with your career.
Honestly, because I've done theater in my past, that didn't pigeonhole me from the get-go. I kind of was having to sing and act and dance in one. Obviously, growing up and, discovering what my true passions were, I levitated towards dance, and so I've been focusing on dance. And that's why I've been doing all these dance shows, because they've been opening up a lot of doors as myself as a dancer. However, I definitely would love to see myself kind of getting back into theatre and getting something that's a little less than just an ensemble and more of a lead opportunity. And I'm trying to get into singing lessons right now and practice on that, because with dance, I've been working on it so much that I'm so confident in it and comfortable with it that I feel safe enough to push it aside for a little bit and focus on the other fields and get the confidence I have when I dance and put it in those other fields. Because if I can build confidence and feel good enough in one field, I know that I can transfer that to another field. I just have to train.
So basically right now your real focus is performance.
100%. Yeah.
Would you ever consider classes or programs or teaching or
actually, my main source of income right now is actually teaching masterclasses.
Okay.
Dance masterclasses. I get invited all over the US, and I've actually, last year I traveled to probably more than 10 countries and taught masterclasses around the world, which was really something I've always wanted to do, just to be able to see the different cultures of how people dance and how people train, because it's so crazy to see how different everyone works.
Yeah.
And it's very inspiring, and it helped me kind of even evolve more as an artist, as a dancer, because you get to pull inspiration from all these different countries you're in. But that's actually what I'm doing mostly at the moment. As far as my income is, I do a lot of masterclasses and teach, and I love it as well. It's not something that I'm just doing on the side. It's something I truly do care about, because whenever I step into a classroom, I know that the students in there are there to learn something, and my biggest goal is to make sure they do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So if students want to follow you on Instagram, at what?
At Michael Dameski, my full name.
Yeah, Dameski.
Yes.
And if you want to contact him, just DM him on there and he will answer you back, right,
Yeah,
Michael?
that's right.
And I would love, if it works out and you're in town, I would love to have you do something at the Leap Gala. And whether we go virtual or we go live, I would love to have you do something at Leap as well.
Yeah, let's organize it for sure.
Yeah. And Paula Abdul, thank you so much for introducing me to Michael. He is a very, very talented and sweet young man. And with that, Dr. Bill, over and out.
Thanks, guys. Bye.